There we go.
Oh, wow.
We're live.
There we go.
Good evening. Thank you for joining the Hudson 7 Drinking Water Council's monthly meeting. Today is Thursday, June the 18th. My name is Rebecca Martin, and I am the Water Quality Program Campaign Manager for Riverkeeper, an acting coordinator and co-organizer, along with the Town of Hyde Park Deputy Supervisor Neil Krupnick, for the Hudson 7's virtual meetings. Before we begin, we would like to go over a few meeting guidelines and procedures to help us navigate the system as efficiently and respectfully as possible. The following procedures are available on the Hudson 7's meeting page on their website at www.hudson7.org. The Hudson 7's meetings are recorded and streamed live on their YouTube channel page. A link to that page can be found on the meeting page of their website. Again, www.hudson7.org. The public is advised to subscribe to this channel to receive notifications when meetings are to begin. Both video and written transcriptions will be made available to the public on the Hudson 7's website on their meeting page at a later date. If members of the public would like to participate during the public comment section of their Zoom meetings, audio or video, pre-registration is required. To pre-register, you can email Neil Krupnick at nkrupnick@hydeparkny.us, and you can find that information on the Hudson 7's website, 1 business day in advance. So for a Thursday meeting, registration is required by 4 p.m. on Wednesday, and include your exact name and address. Participants will be sent a meeting ID and password to join the meeting. If you log in to join the meeting and your screen name does not match your pre-registration name, for example, if you use your spouse's computer, his, her, their name would pop up. You will not be admitted to the meeting. If you are unable to change your screen name, simply let us know when you register that you will be entering the meeting under whatever name is associated with your Zoom account and/or computer. Both registration and the additional requirement of signing in with your exact name is to prevent what has become popularly known as Zoom bombing. There have been incidents across the country as well as right here in the Hudson Valley. Once you are logged in, you will be placed in the virtual waiting room. The moderator will let you into the meeting at the appropriate time. You can watch the proceedings of the meeting via the live stream link while you're waiting. When you enter the meeting, you will be muted to give you time to turn off the volume on your YouTube link to prevent feedback. You will be asked to state your name and your municipality. Written comments are also accepted and can be submitted via email before the live meeting. And you'd send your comments to nkrupnick, KRUPNICK, at hydeparkny.us. If you would like your comment read into the record during the live meeting, your comment must be received 1 business day in advance. For the Thursday meeting, submission is required by 4 p.m. on Wednesday, and be able to be read in 3 minutes or less, which is approximately 400 words. All comments are to conform to basic standards of civil public discourse and courtesy. Boards will reserve the right to the Hudson 7 will refuse the right to read into the record obscene comments or comments containing personal attacks on others, but the comment shall be made part of the public record. The co-organizers for today's meeting reserve the right to mute, lock, and/or pause the meeting to eject anyone who has behaved inappropriately. Comments longer than 3 minutes will be accepted into the record and distributed to the board, but will not be required to be read during the meeting. As for the Hudson 7 council members, Hudson 7 members can control their own mute buttons. Good practice would be to mute yourself if you are not speaking to avoid background noise and feedback. If a Hudson 7 member wishes to speak, please raise your hand and the chairperson will call on them. Before you speak, please state your name for any of the audio or video listeners. Lastly, at tonight's meeting, we have in attendance the Hudson 7 Chair, Village of Rhinebeck Mayor Gary Bassett, the Hudson 7 Vice Chair is not present, but in his place for voting is Bill Carlos from the town of Poughkeepsie. Hudson 7 Secretary position is vacant at this moment. Hudson 7 committee members include Neil Krupnick from the town of Hyde Park, Bill Carlos from the town of Poughkeepsie, Randy Allstadt from the town and city of Poughkeepsie, and water plant operator, as well as technical advisor. Dan Shapley is a non-voting member from Riverkeeper. Emily Swenson, technical advisor. Paul Melnrose, technical advisor, non-voting member, Emily too. And town of Esopus supervisor, Shannon Harris. On behalf of the Hudson 7, I now turn the floor over to Chairman Gary Bassett.
Good evening and welcome everybody. I hope you're all having as much fun as I am in the reopening of your towns and or villages in my case. I think the reopening is becoming harder than the closing was in a lot of ways, but it's energizing to see a lot of great things happening in all of communities right now, and especially with what we're doing here with Hudson 7. So again, welcome everybody. I'd like to state that we have a quorum for this evening's meeting and that all records will be recorded and as submitted by Rebecca and Neil. So first on the agenda is approval of the 5/16 meeting minutes with the amendment that the public comments will be read into record and therefore amended into the minutes. Do I have a nomination? I'll make the first nomination to approve the minutes for 5/16. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Supervisor Shannon Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye by raising your hand. Please.
Aye.
So we have unanimous approval. Anybody abstain? So object, so carried. All right. So moving on, we have communications, and I've asked Rebecca Martin to read into the communications that are in the agenda.
Gary, would you like me to also first state the additional items to the agenda this evening? Or would you like?
Let's do that right after the communications piece, Rebecca, if you don't mind.
So item A, the Hudson 7's 2-year anniversary blog post is now available. There's a hyperlink here that you can see in your agenda, but it's also on the front page of the Hudson 7 website. That was posted by Riverkeeper. So congratulations, Hudson 7, for your 2-year anniversary, May 31st. Item B, thank you was received by Elaine Petit, Chief Water Treatment Plant Operator from the Dutchess County Water and Wastewater Authority, to the Hudson 7 for their commendation letter during COVID. Item C, the Hudson River Watershed Alliance Toast to the Tribs was postponed until June the 23rd. And those source materials were in your packet, in your agenda packet for more details. Oh, thanks, Neil. Everybody see that? Item D from Jessica Quonen from the Hudson Estuary Specialist, or who is the Hudson Estuary Specialist for the New York Sea Grant, sent an update to the Hudson 7. The first webinar hosted by Great Lakes Sea Grant Crude Oil Transport Network for this year's summer series will be towards the end of June and posted shortly. So this is a follow-up to her public comment last month. The speaker is Mark Malkoff from Lake Champlain Sea Grant at SUNY Plattsburgh, the aquatic resource specialist who has been studying this issue for and is retiring soon. She sent a blog post that's hyperlinked on the Hudson 7 website in the agenda, and wrote earlier this year about the recent decrease in rail transport in our region that was mentioned during her previous public comment in May. The topic will be a back to basics and should be a good one for interested Hudson 7 folks to join. Item C is communication from Doreen Tignianelli. The subject, why the lack of acknowledgement of my public comment for Hudson 7 meeting of May the 21st, 2020. My written public comments were not read into the public record at the Thursday, May 21, 2020 Hudson 7 meeting. My written comments were not acknowledged under the public comment section of the meeting, nor in meeting minutes. I followed instructions which said comments must be less than 400 words. Mine were 275 words and able to be read in 3 minutes. I submitted the comments, see below, at 2:29 p.m. Wednesday, which was before the 4 p.m. deadline. My comments were not obscene and did not contain personal attacks. I would like to know why my comments were not read into the record or acknowledged. And that has been responded to by Chairman Gary Bassett. G, Neil Curry, Town of Lloyd, submitted materials from a recent webinar from June the 9th, 2020, that was titled, What is Drinking Water? Working with the Drinking Water Laboratory, and the power plant was attached in your source materials. And that's it.
Thank you, Rebecca. And next, we have public comments for this evening. Rebecca, could you also read the public comment from 5/21/20?
Yep.
So it could read into the record.
Yep. Also from Doreen Tignianelli, pardon my pronunciation. This is from last month. The minutes have been amended to reflect these comments. 1, a records access officer must be appointed, and a FOIL policy with instructions for appeal, etc., should be posted on the website. 2, regarding my FOIL request, the response was there were no records found. I then requested certification per FOIL Chapter 89.3a that a diligent search was conducted and received the same response. However, email communications are records, and there were emails specific to the subject of public comment for the April 16th, 2020 meeting. It should be noted that the response wasn't that records were denied in whole or in part, but that there were no records found, which was not the case. Therefore, I do not believe my FOIL request was accurately answered. 3, for clarification, I never said the Hudson 7 had to allow public comment. I am well versed in the open meetings law and know that public comment is not a requirement. My point was that members of the public should be treated equally if public comment is allowed per numerous Committee on Open Government opinions. I pointed that out because a person who was not a board member or advisor commented multiple times throughout the April meeting, even acknowledging, I know I'm kind of out of order here and a member of the public, but I also never said that video was required under the governor's executive order. What my email said was that it was unclear why the public was invited to listen in only to the April meeting instead of being able to participate real time in the public comment portion of the meeting by using Zoom as the town of Poughkeepsie was doing. And it's signed by the author.
Thank you, Rebecca. Okay, moving on.
Did we allow Excuse me, Gary, should we allow Europa McGovern in, who is here for public comment?
We do not have that on agenda. I would like to make a request to board for approval to enter into public comment. I make a motion to enter into public comment. All in favor? Second by Neil, excuse me. All in favor? Raise.
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Having none, abstain, having none. Yes, we can move into public comment. If you could open that up for us, Neil.
Invited her in. I don't see her. Don't hear her. Europa, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hello, Europa.
Hi, everyone. You can hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
All right, perfect. Well, I'm Europa McGovern. I'm a senior environmental resource technician at Ulster County's Department of the Environment. I joined back in late February, right before this whole COVID crisis. Excellent timing to change jobs. But I just wanted to share that I listened into last month's meeting. I will be listening into future meetings. We'll see if, when it changes to in-person attendance, if I'll also be able to attend future meetings. And I'll be able to relay any messages, to Ulster County through my attendance and listening in at the meetings. And I also, just for the record, my previous position, I used to attend meetings for the Hudson Valley Regional Council, where I was a planner until I started this position with Ulster County. And I will provide the Hudson 7 updates in the future if I receive any from Pat Pomeroy, Executive Director there, about the Drinking Water Source Protection Program funding and consultant support. And that's all I have. I hope everyone's doing well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Europa. Neil, any others?
That is it.
You're good. All right, we'll close the public comment section. Moving on to reports, actions, and old business. First item on the agenda, Paul, the AWWA presentation update.
Actually, I'm sorry to interrupt, but do I need to introduce the new agenda items, Gary?
Sorry, there's so many changes. Yes, I forgot about that, Rebecca. I'm going to go backwards. There are some new items that have been recommended to be on. I would like to get the board approval to add to the agenda the new business items. If everybody has them, if not, I will read them. You have already on the agenda the Hudson 7 secretary and their duties. We want to add item 2 to re-elect council leadership as per bylaws. And then number 3, the coordinator position, which is Rebecca. I'd like to make a motion to add these new items to the new business.
Second.
We have a second.
Second.
Neil raised his hand, so I'll grab Neil. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? So carried. Okay. Thank you, Rebecca. I need these things laid out in front of me. All right, now we'll move on to reports, actions, and old business. Paul.
Okay, so my AWWA conference was canceled. It was going to be in July because of the virus. It was canceled. I might be doing it sometime in the fall or next spring. So I'm really looking forward to getting what your accomplishments were. I'm really thinking that's going to be a good part of my presentation. So maybe the delay is actually going to be a good thing. The next thing was on my Endocrine Disruptor paper. I sent it out last month. It was only about 3 pages, and I also got some information from Randy on micropollutants. I guess the first thing I'd like to talk about is, what is an endocrine disruptor? What is a micropollutant? You guys had a presentation given by Cornell back in January of 2019. And I would guess to say that a micropollutant is any chemical that's made by man that's going to affect the environment. Now, an endocrine disruptor is also any sort of chemical that will affect the hormones in our bodies. So I guess the endocrine disruptors is a portion of these micropollutants that you guys heard about in January of 2019. But they can include anything like industrial chemicals, synthetic and naturally occurring hormones, pharmaceuticals, household chemicals, disinfectant byproducts, as we talked about, even metals, personal care products, and pesticides and herbicides. Now, there's about 84,000 chemicals that fall into these categories, so it's kind of hard to keep track of them. But there has been a lot of scientific information that they are affecting particularly fish. Male fish are taking on female characteristics. Also, there's thought that they might be making little girls mature sooner or might cause birth defects. Of course, the pharmaceutical industry will respond by saying, you know, we've been testing these things forever and ever, and they're in such minute quantities that we don't think they would be any problem. But it just seems to me that this has been going around. I remember the word endocrine disruptors coming up back in the early 2000s, or maybe even in the 1990s. But as I said, it's so many chemicals to be looked at, it's kind of hard. But how it affects the reproduction system is pretty well documented by USGS. Now, what's been happening in the Hudson River? Well, you guys know about the Cornell study that was done with river keepers, and I have to commend river keepers for doing that. I guess they have a boat and can take the sampling and know how to do it. And in that time, that was 2016 to 2017, they sampled over 200 chemicals and at 17 sites, and about 50% of the sites had these chemicals. Then Riverkeepers also did another study with EPA and several other researchers and took samples from Troy all the way down to New York City. And what they found, they only measured or sampled for 16 pharmaceuticals, and 90% of the places had these pharmaceuticals in them. What kind of got me was that one of the highest sites was around the Kingston outfall. So that's right in our particular area. But you know, you see all these drugs like high pressure drugs, Tylenol, and a lot of other anti-cholesterol drugs. So they are present. And I guess, you know, what can we do as the Hudson 7? Because there's just so much research. I think we need to try to keep pushing to find out what are the effects. We probably need to look at more advanced treatment at wastewater treatment plants and at water treatment plants. Randy did some sampling and found that after ozone, there was a significant reduction of these micropollutants. But the one thing that we really could do is take a look at or support the drug take-back program and encourage people not to flush drugs down the toilets and things along those lines, which is a pretty simple thing, but I think it's worth us following up on that. There's a lot more I can cover, and I'll just keep looking at this over the next couple of months, but that's where I have. I don't know if anybody has any questions, but I think it's a concern that we need to be aware of at least.
Randy, I think you wanted to make a comment. Is that correct? Randy?
I think it was Dan that wanted to make a comment.
Oh, I have a comment. I see something in the chat box from
Yeah,
Dan.
it's from, yeah. I just wanted to say about the Kingston outfall that was referenced as, particularly high concentrations and number of pharmaceuticals. I think it's important that everyone understands that that is in large part because of the when we can stick a bottle in the water at that outfall, we can actually really get the direct treated effluent from that plant. Whereas in other situations, usually there's some amount of dilution, even if we're right near a treatment plant. So I think that finding that there are particularly high concentrations relative to other places at the Kingston outfall, what it's really saying is that wastewater treatment plants are the source of these pharmaceuticals. And we get a particularly good sample of a wastewater treatment plant at Kingston. There's not something special about Kingston. People aren't using more pharmaceuticals in Kingston than in Poughkeepsie or Rhinebeck or any place else. It's just we have a particularly good way to kind of measure it right there. So I just want everyone to sort of understand that context.
Thank you, Dan.
Gary,
Randy's raising his hand.
I saw an article today on micropollutants, which is small scale plastics in the wastewater. And they were kind of highlighting that comes in overflows from stormwater. And so it might be something we want to keep an eye on, maybe look more into, because we do have with the city of Poughkeepsie and Kingston, they have overflows in the storms, but that could be a point where a lot of things are going to water that we really don't want to see.
Any other comments? Emily?
Thanks for that information, Paul. I thought that you mentioned, and I just wanted a little clarification. Did you say that after treatment with ozone, there's a reduction in these pollutants? And why would that be? You're muted right now, Paul.
Paul, you're muted. I know.
No, you're muted again.
Again,
Okay, now am I muted?
Now you're good.
no, you're okay.
Good.
Okay, so ozone oxidizes a lot of these pharmaceuticals, and the data that Randy collected pretty well proves that. So it's a good feature. Ozone is a great feature, but it's very expensive. So it's something that we'd really like to use as a last resort. Just like you're looking at regulations for controlling runoff and things like that and zoning, I think by supporting the drug take back program and other things along those lines, taking people's waste herbicides or insecticides could be really a big help in this whole area.
Interesting.
So, Paul, I have a question. I like this report, and I believe that we should be sharing as much information as possible. Should this be sent out to all of the municipalities that have wastewater treatment plants that are part of the council?
That would be a first step. I would like to, edit this a little bit and work with Dan a little bit on this.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you. All right. I did get a note in the chat box from Supervisor Shannon Harris. She is attending a wonderful event for the twins' graduation and has to leave shortly. And I think it'd be prudent while we still have a quorum to move to new business to take the votes that we need to do to adopt some of the things that we want to get adopted. And I'd like to make a motion that we suspend this report section and go to new business.
Second,
Second. All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay. All right, Shannon, thank you for staying along for a couple of minutes. I really appreciate it. So moving into the new business section. First item on the agenda, Hudson 7, the secretary position has always been open. We have an opportunity now to fill that position with Neil from the town of Hyde Park, with the duties that are in the agenda. I won't waste any time to read all the duties unless everybody wants, but I'd like to make a motion to accept Neil Kubernick as from the town of Hyde Park as the Hudson 7 secretary.
I make a motion to accept Neil Kripnick as the secretary for the Hudson 7.
I'll
Okay,
second.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Opposed, abstained? Congratulations, Neil.
Thank you.
And just for all the record, to put everything on the table, Rebecca is still going to provide a lot of help in this position and helping to fill that role. But it's great that we have a council member that can fill that position. So thank you again, Neil. Second, re-elect council leadership. We've now surpassed our second year, and it's now time to re-elect the membership to the council again. And currently we have Village of Rhinebeck, myself, Mayor Gary Bassett as chair, Town of Poughkeepsie Supervisor John J. Baisley as vice chair, and in those positions, and now Secretary Neil for the council. I'm happy to stay on as chair if the council so approves. And I'm
Are you
not going
going to do each one individually, Gary? You want to start with the chair? Since Jay's not here, we can address that one next.
Yes.
Start with you?
So,
Okay.
I need a motion from someone.
Can we do all three in one motion?
I'm sorry, Bill, what did you say?
Can we do all three in one motion?
Well, Jay's not here.
I love doing it when he's not here.
That's your call, Bill.
You're voting
I
for
make a
Jay.
motion to re-elect all three current serving officers in their current positions for another term.
Okay.
I'll
We have a
second.
second, seconded by Randy. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Wait to tell Jay.
Abstained? So carried. All right. Thank you, Shannon, for willing to stay for a couple of minutes here to help us get through that.
You have one more, Gary.
Yeah, one more. Now, coordinator position. We've always had the coordinator position, having Rebecca Martin, who is so graciously from Riverkeeper, is helping to continue to perform all the duties for Hudson 7 and basically reporting to myself, to the chair. I'd like to make a motion, if Rebecca so chooses, to accept Rebecca Martin as the coordinator position chair for the Hudson 7.
Second.
Is that
Second.
okay, Dan?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? So carried. Very good.
Thank you, Rebecca. You've been doing a great job.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
so much.
Yes.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you all.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thanks for having me and us.
Okay, let's go back to update on the Central Hudson, the manufacturing, what is that, the gas plant or tar plant? So
Yeah.
I believe, Randy, that was you to give an update?
Central Hudson's decided that they're not going to use the clam drill, the dredging that they proposed last year, that it's not going to work. They tried to build a moon pool, but the river wouldn't allow it. So now they're looking at hydraulic dredging, which means they're going to vacuum this stuff out. Last week they did some testing, or last 2 weeks they did some testing. They drilled some holes in the river to try to see what materials are down there and how well they can be vacuumed up. And I haven't heard any results from that testing. They're looking to not do anything until September. Earliest they're going to get back in the river is August, but they don't really know what they're doing right now because they need the results of this testing. I think what I saw in one letter was DEC was told that they have 2 choices: go to vacuum dredging or relocate the intake for the Poughkeepsie water treatment plant. And I don't think that went over well.
I wonder why.
So, if I may, everybody who's on the board remembers this. one of the reasons we're here. We originally suggested hydraulic dredging way back before all of this started. And the river has a way of doing what the river is going to do. And if man thinks we can drive some kind of a moon pool down into the subsurface of the river, we're telling ourselves a story. I am very happy that Central Hudson has taken this step in this direction. All of that stuff has got to come out of our river. It's got to be treated so that the water, when this thing works, it sucks everything. And it's got to go through a processing plant where it's dewatered, and then the material is dealt with, and the water can flow back into the Hudson River. That shouldn't be any kind of problem except for maybe some sediment, I guess, Randy, for our intakes or for the plant. So I want to compliment publicly Central Hudson for taking this step. It's always nice to compliment people for doing what you ask them to do after you get done beating them with a baseball bat. Okay, Central Hudson, thank you very much.
I could add to that. One of the things we're doing is Central Hudson offered to help us with a 5-year lease for a gas chromatograph so we could monitor the river better when they're doing this work. We've worked through our budget. We've talked to Central Hudson. We've looked at trying to, instead of leasing it, to purchase it. So we're now in negotiations to purchase a gas chromatograph, and we're modifying our lab to house it. So we should have all that up and running by the time, hopefully by July. So we can, well, August, I guess, because July's next week. I guess August. But we're looking at getting that shortly so we can get that moving along.
That's great. So what is the board's opinion of writing a letter to Central Hudson and you taking Bill's comment and thanking him for taking the right direction?
Yeah, just not the baseball bat part.
You're right. We did that. We already did the baseball bat. Yeah.
Okay.
But let's publicly acknowledge them, with a letter.
I
right?
agree. Do we need a motion and for that to be done, Mr. Chair?
Yes,
I make the motion.
I'll second.
all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? So Bill, will you help draft a letter? Bill and Randy?
Absolutely.
Very good. And then you can get it to us and we can send it out.
Okay.
They just suggested, I'm sure you would anyway, but, make sure you compliment, but maintain, that you're keeping a watchful eye and you're not, that you're not endorsing everything. Leave yourself room to
Good point.
continue to advocate if you need to.
We're going to have a watchful eye and a gas chromatograph. So do what you want to do, but it's not like we were 2 years ago, and it's much different. That's because of the power of a group like this. So yes, let's thank them very much for what they're doing. We don't know where else it can happen on the Hudson River.
Right.
So let's say
All right.
thanks.
Let's get that. Let's try to do that and get that out.
Gary,
Randy.
I'd like to point out too that Central Hudson bought us a camera system that we now monitor the wet well and the river from our operator's lab. They also purchased a slick sleuth, which monitors the surface of the water that for any indication of oil, and that's installed and continuously monitored now. So that's something else that Central Hudson done that we should give credit to.
I think that should be all part of the acknowledgement, right?
Yep.
Randy, we should really put that in. We should really put that into the letter, thanking them for everything, and send a copy of the letter to the local Poughkeepsie Journal.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's in the interest of the other papers, but if you're going to thank somebody, especially for something like this, we should do it very publicly.
Yeah. And how about to our county executives on both sides as well?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Fantastic. All right, moving on. Update municipal code review. Emily, do you have any update for us?
Not today, sorry. I emailed Dan earlier, so I need some more time on that. I've been swamped.
No worries. No worries. All right, Dan, update on the New York State Drinking Water Source Protection Program.
I did reach
What do
out
we know?
to DEC. So this is the program, everyone will remember, that Isopus applied for on behalf of the Hudson 7. It would kick off a planning process to develop a protection plan. We've been talking about it for, seems like, since we started. And the good news is that I expected to hear, well, the pandemic is here and the budget's under threat and, you know, everyone's focused elsewhere, so don't expect anything. And instead, what I heard was that they have hired or are near to hiring their contractor. They've continued the process essentially, and they're expecting to make an announcement soon, which is what we've been hearing for, you know, many months. But at least it was better than I frankly expected. So hopefully we will hear something relatively soon.
That's great news. I was expecting, like you, Dan, every inquiry I've made so far is that everything has been suspended and term is indefinitely. So I'm very encouraged, and hopefully we'll get this in place. Good.
On that
Okay.
positive note, I'm going to sign off for now. Thank you very much, everyone.
Happy graduation.
Thank you.
Tell the kids congratulations as well from all of us.
Oh, I will. Thanks.
Okay, water operators. This is just an update. I think everybody sent out the letters. I know I did for the village of Rhinebeck to our water operators. I have not received a response from them, but I know that they got them. Has everybody else been able to do the same?
My operators came back and probably half of them came to me and said, that's really nice that we got this letter. It's really great recognition. And I see we got a letter from Alan Pettit. He used to work for us and now he's in charge of Hyde Park. So yeah, he pronounces it Elaine Allen. So, but it's nice to see what he wrote.
Excellent. Well, it's one way to keep how we can, continue to keep them engaged by updating with information that this group has done. So I think that's fantastic.
Yep.
The next step we were convening, next steps for convening operators and providing assistance during the COVID. I believe this was my task to do. And I have to say, I need to postpone this. I have not had time to focus on this in the last month. So I would like to postpone this to later. Equipment share, Randy.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything right now.
Okay. But are you is this a task you're still going to continue?
Sure, I'll get to it. I think the town of Poughkeepsie might have some good stuff too, so I need to get with them. They've been helping us out recently on some work, and I found out some things that I didn't know, but I'll get together and I'll try to get something from the water plant, city of Poughkeepsie and the town of Poughkeepsie.
Okay. Rebecca.
If Europa's on the line, it might be good to she's gone. Okay. Just because she works for the county, just an update on what we're doing, but another time with the equipment share.
Yeah. We can always reach out to her independently and let her know as well, right? So, okay. The coordination, funding, update on SRA program. Dan, anything?
Only that normally this is the month when we would see the grant program announced that we hope to apply for, and it hasn't been announced. And as of maybe a week or 10 days ago, there was a meeting of the management committee for the SRA program, and it seems this is a program that is at least, doesn't have a green light to start. It doesn't have a red light not to have a grant program either, but it's a little bit, seems in limbo with the pandemic, the best I can tell. So there's no date to aim for yet to when to expect the grant program might be opened up for the year. And there's a possibility there that there may not be grants this year. We'll have to see.
All right, I think, that's going to fall into the category. We're going to have to hurry up and wait. Read. Okay, work on discussion on priorities. I know we haven't met as a group to talk about, but Dan did send out an update. Dan, do you want to share the update with us?
Sure. So I took the three priorities that you all had discussed, which were COVID related emergency preparedness and communications, the Central Hudson coal tar remediation that we just talked about, and the watershed protection codes that Emily's working on. Those were the three priorities you talked about. And then I looked back through notes and whatnot to see what else was going to be on the docket, or might be. So we just talked about the drinking water source protection program that could be starting for us if the state support comes through. The coordinator, which we just talked about, so getting that application in. Continuing to work on spill prevention and response with the work that started with the Coast Guard. And then the climate resiliency planning, remember the council put in a letter of support for this, and it's focused on Hyde Park, Esopus, and Lloyd, I believe. And then separately, Village and Town of Rhinebeck are engaged on a kind of the same planning process, I believe, but on a different, different grant or different sort of schedule. So that's still, there might be some things that happen this year with that. And then I threw in there, just something that the council's always been interested in, just supporting each other on any of your infrastructure grant applications that you might be doing this spring. So if you go to the next page, it's just one page, just tried to look at each of those. So each of those, 7 items that I just went through are on the left column. Those are the priorities. And then I just tried to think through expectations over the rest of the year, essentially, in rough increments, not knowing when all of this stuff definitely happens. So just tried to be somewhat, best guess about it, to give you some sense of what you might want to be focused on each month with your agendas and any work in between to keep each of these things moving along. So if you look at where we are now, June, July, we've just discussed the letters to the operators being the sort of, action that you've wanted to do on COVID. I don't think there's another one that you've discussed at this point. So that might be complete for the year.
Yeah, Dan, we just discussed, excuse me, Dan, we just did discuss the one for that Paul's working on the endocrines.
Right. Okay. So I can add that communication to the wastewater operators. And the remediation we just talked about. So it would update that with the letter that you plan to send, and then just continuing to be able to advocate for improvements as needed. Based on what Emily told me today about, her best guess for moving the project that she's volunteered to do to review codes. Esopus is done, and then just going to look through the other communities in the Hudson 7 and then go through some analysis of how they each compare, look for gaps in local laws and potential model ordinances that communities could consider. So Emily can revise that if that timeline's not right, but it's a first step at trying to estimate when how that project will move. We just talked about the source water protection program. So, we might expect that they make an announcement in the next month or so. That's again, a guess. If they do, then we are selected, if the Hudson 7 is selected, then the first step would be to form a stakeholder group, which we've talked about a little bit, and already have the counties engaged and some others. So some groundwork to make that happen, but it would probably be a larger meeting than the typical monthly meeting to get that stakeholder group together. And again, maybe that's August, September, maybe it wouldn't be till October, November. It's a little uncertain, but better to plan for it happening earlier than later, I figured. Coordinator funding, as we just talked about, the grant deadline is hopefully going to be soon. And then we would learn, by the end of the year, if that grant comes through, if there is a grant. Spill response, I think the best we know is there might be some more meetings later in the summer and fall, moving toward some of the planning that's going on there. And then the climate resiliency planning, checking in with Emily Vale at the Hudson River Watershed Alliance. She gave me these timeframes as a best guess for how those projects might move along. And then similarly, I think the grant deadlines are typically in July for some of the infrastructure projects. So some of the letters of support that the council has been doing for those projects would probably be in that time frame. And then by the end of the year, we'd hear what, if anything, was funded. So looking at that's it, it's just that one page. So looking at those priorities that the council's talked about, these are some of the milestones and timeframes that, as far as I could tell, would kind of help to guide the planning from here on out.
Thanks, Dan. Dan, during the last couple of weeks when we've been discussing some other things, an idea that crossed my mind is something that you were working on, and that was the collaboration between the two counties at the county executive level. Is that something that we should continue to pursue to see how we can, maybe help elevate our status at the county level and get them involved as part of a priority?
Yeah, I mean, it's great that Europa is already here, and attending. So that's Ulster County's represented. And so it seems like maybe if there's going to be any initial next step, it would be to talk to Dutchess County and see if they could also maybe send someone like Europa to start to participate and come up to speed on what you're doing. And then I think if the state support comes through, building that stakeholder group would be something the counties would be a part of, and also could hopefully help, enlist other partners that, help in the outreach to get the right group together.
So Dan, did I hear you say that you were going to volunteer to reach out to Dutchess County and see, or would you? I can do that as well, or we could do it together.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I think it's best if you do it, just because the council, speaking for the council, I think is just stronger, and it shows them, that it's not, there won't be any confusion that it's like Riverkeeper, leading rather than the council leading. Right. But I'm happy to help in any way that I can at any point. I know you're busy with reopening and whatnot too. So
yeah. All right. Well, I just wanted to see if that's still of interest of the group to be able to want to engage at the county level on each side, and try to figure out what our interfaces are like Europa to them. I see Bill nodding his head and Neil nodding. All right.
I think we've seen that over the last, while we've been doing stuff, the counties both have gotten together more than they ever did. And I think we're already moving in that direction. I think it'd be great if we could keep them going that direction, be part of work and realizing they both share the river.
All right, I'll take the to-do to try to work with them to see if we can find someplace, a point of contact that would be willing to participate.
I'll remind you, Gary.
No, thank you.
Do you have a preference of which Dutchess County department? I mean, we don't have a Department of the Environment. Would it be planning or health, or, do we have a preference rather than just take who's thrown to us?
Well, I don't, yeah. They do have a climate smart task force as well that they've been running, that it might be interesting to interject, maybe go through that channel as one thought, but I'm open to suggestions. Rebecca raised her hand first.
Dan, who was at the meeting with us from Dutchess County when the Hudson 7 gave permission for you to meet with Dutchess in Ulster at the Poughkeepsie Water Treatment Facility? That might be of interest to reach out to for Gary.
Yeah, I think it was the planning department. Well, I know the planning department was represented. I'm trying to remember if there was a representative from any other departments. I don't think planning.
I think planning makes sense.
Yeah, I think so too. Health might be helpful as well at some point, because with the source water planning, they would be involved. But I think planning and the resources they would bring with mapping and the like, the codes as well might be really most beneficial.
I mean, The name that what I was thinking about before as I was mentioning this was Owen Rafter. I don't know how many people know Owen to just whether he'd be a good source to contact or not, and try to work out an arrangement.
Yeah, why don't we, I don't have it in front of me, but Rebecca and I can find the list of who attended that meeting and maybe share it again with you if we haven't already, and that could help.
Yeah, I'd like to help establish that. I'd like to make a connection there. Because eventually, as we talked about, it'd be great to get more recognition at each of the county level. If we go to the county level and then get recognition at the state level for what we're doing, we can just start trying to build it up through that process.
Gary, who is Owen Rafter, just so I can document that?
I forget his title. I'd have to look it up.
He works for Dutchess County.
He's the planning commissioner.
Yeah. And he is in charge of Dutchess County Climate Smart Community.
Right.
I think Dutchess County emergency planning should be included.
So we got to start one place. We're going to start with the list and then we'll decide and we'll go from there. Okay.
Sounds good.
Rebecca, you had to raise your hand? No?
I just didn't hear who Randy had said. It was muffled.
He
said Dutchess County emergency planning.
Emergency planning, thanks.
And that's Dana Smith,
Right.
who's responsible there.
One of the things I point out that during all this COVID stuff that happened, we were never contacted by Dutchess County Emergency. Dana Smith.
Neither have we.
Yeah, no support at all, you know.
I mean, I have my opinion about that, but we can talk about that later.
Well, I'm just saying, if we get ourselves in front of them, they will know to support us.
Yeah,
That's why I recommended them.
very good. Paul?
On the spill response, I know that, we've been talking about meeting with the Coast Guard, but is a lot of that confidential, or how do we handle that?
It is confidential, Paul, until they announce what they're going to do, which has been postponed. So the actual plan and planning process going into that remains a confidential issue with them and the people on the committee. They continue to include me in all of their meetings, some of which I've been able to attend, some I have not, but the majority of them have been postponed and not rescheduled.
And they've also included Shannon and myself.
Oh, very good.
So I'm in it too. So we're involved with it. And
Yeah.
then as things get more available, we can report back to the group.
And it's not all, it's the fact that there are meetings and that the Coast Guard and the DEC have met with the Hudson 7 about better planning around drinking water protection as part of spill response is not confidential, obviously, or we wouldn't be talking about it. But so there's sort of a base level aspect that it's.
What I was referring to is the actual events of the spill response. That's the confidential part.
Okay. That's what I wanted clarified, what was actually confidential, because I know we've been talking about it, and I think that's a major accomplishment of the Hudson 7 to do that.
Yeah, the Coast Guard is really committed to doing an exercise in the Hudson River. With an event tabletop considering an event happening in the Hudson River watershed. So it's really good. And they're going to do it. They're definitely going to do it as soon as they get through this virus thing.
Yep. Okay, very good. Thank you, everyone.
Can I just make a correction? I said that Owen was was the coordinator for Climate Smart Communities, but that's Brad Barkley.
Yeah.
Who works underneath Owen. So.
Yeah, so Brad reports right to Owen.
Yeah.
So, so I thought maybe a good point to start would be, I didn't want to go to Brad. I wanted to go a little bit higher up at Owen because I know he reports right to the county executive. So. Okay, very good. I'd like to, Rebecca?
No, I just want to say to Paul that in the blog post, in the 2-year anniversary, there it touches upon that. You're right, it is a big accomplishment. And it's noted in the Riverkeeper blog post, which is in the agenda, but I can send you the link so you can see it.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the Hudson 7 meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? So carried. Wonderful seeing you all again. You all everybody have a great evening.
So long, everyone.
Good night.
Be safe, everyone.
Neil, thank you for helping us a lot. This was great.
Definitely. Thank you, Neil.
My pleasure. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Neil and Rebecca.
Bye.